Hello everybody, Raven Knight here, coming at you with a very unique video. This is going to be something kind of fun today. I've got with me not only a fan of the channel, but another content creator For Honor who I've been following for a little while. General Fujikiyo. If you don't recognize that name, go play the For Honor campaign again and you'll see him midway through the Viking storyline. It's pretty awesome. How you doing, General?
I'm doing great. It's been difficult to come back from being beaten by the Raider, but we gotta
Right.
do it somehow.
Yeah, eventually you just had to come back from that, right? Absolutely. But in all seriousness, I want to thank you for joining me today. How this all started, guys, for those who want to know, is me and Fujikiyo had been in conversation for a little while, and we both had some questions we wanted to ask the other, since both of us do the very rare thing of discussing history in For Honor, which not a lot of content creators do. And we both wanted to pick each other's brains a little bit about our stuff, so we're going to have some fun here. And I've got some questions I wanted to ask, and what we'll do is we'll go back and forth. I'll ask a question, and then if the general will be so kind, then he'll ask a question back at me, and we'll go back and forth for a little while. And if you guys, as you're listening, have any other questions you'd like to ask either of us, please feel free to ask those in the comments down below, and we'll keep an eye on the video and we'll answer comments whenever they come about. All right. So I'll go ahead and get us started, General. So the first thing I wanted to ask is, I remember you released a video where you were talking about why you love For Honor and why you make the videos that you do. You explained that you loved the history in For Honor, so you're a lot like me. But
Yeah.
what was it about For Honor's history that so appealed to you? Because technically, you could argue that there are a lot of historical games out there. Like there's Neo, there's Ghost of Tsushima, there's the Call of Duty games. There's a lot of historical games out there. What was it about For Honor's history that appealed to you?
Well, for me, I think it was For Honor was the first historical game. I would say, well, somewhat historical. I think we all know that Ubisoft has maybe made some intriguing decisions in the near future, and
Right.
of recently they've been a bit strange. But besides that, it was my first game to really get into more like the history aspect of games and just in general. And it was the first starting point, and I think I've loved it ever since. Even though obviously Ubisoft made some intriguing decisions, as I've said, but I still love this game, and I will continue to play it for the rest of my life. That's a
Yeah.
good thing and a bad thing. So
No, it makes sense. I was only curious because and I feel like this is a question that cuts both ways when it comes to history. For Honor is very niche in that regard. Like you said, they make odd decisions, very questionable ones. But I think it's a lot of the fact when they hit home, it really does. They really do hit home. Like I felt like the Halloween event, for example, this last year with the Yorogumo and stuff like that was pretty on point. You did like a couple videos on that, as I recall.
um, yeah, I'm still working on ones. I've been that delayed on that video. But yeah, that Jogumo video, I mean, sorry, Jogumo event was a very good time for me because I love samurai history, so it was a great thing to delve into. And they did a really good job. Like, not gonna lie, they did a really good job. The only thing I disliked was some of the armor variants that they released, but other than that, it was a really good event. And I do hope that they make more of these because it was a fun little story, and it's more realistic to folklore than anything else. It's better than obviously the Hawkos and the Chimera type of stories that they've made themselves.
Yeah,
You can really
I agree
tell
with
that there's
that.
more spirit to it,
No, I
or at
agree with that
least,
100%. Like,
yeah.
beats the Horkos and Chimera plot point out of the water with that, and it was very simply done, very on point. I liked that a lot.
You can't go wrong. You just take the idea of these folklore legends from history and then just give it a new medium or at least new way to flourish. And I think that's what they did. I think that's what they excel at the most instead of making their own stories.
I can agree with that. I can definitely agree with that. Okay, well, I could go on to my next question if you like, because you brought up something interesting. You said that you've loved the samurai. So my next question is, you seem to focus specifically on the samurai. Is there a particular reason for that?
My reasoning for that is that I mostly only know samurai history. I do wish I knew more Chinese because not many people talk about the Wulin except you. I think you're the only one I know of may talk about the Wulin now and then. But I fell in love with samurai history when I was younger, learning about it in school, and I've always loved it since then. Sadly, my school didn't really teach me much more about samurai history because we went into more modern history, and I don't particularly like modern because I find it a bit boring for myself. So I'd always learn about history either from you or at least from other people, and just doing my own research in my spare time after school. So it was great to come into For Honor and more or less realize these cool little details I maybe didn't know when I first started playing For Honor. I thought, well, I might as well talk about them. You know, it's something I'm passionate about, and I love history, so let's give it a go. Now I don't think I'm ever going to stop. Well, maybe until maybe For Honor stops adding more history content
Right.
for me to talk about, then yeah, I will stop. But other than that, it's been a wonderful thing to do.
Absolutely. And on that note, since you said that you'd be interested in learning more of the Chinese history aspect, what about the Knights and the Vikings? Do you have any interest in those, or was it specifically the Asian factions?
I think I definitely the other factions I would definitely want to be interested in. The Knights, especially because here's a little personal fact. I'm German. I'm half German, so it'd always be interesting to learn more about that.
I got
And
you.
for the Vikings, I haven't really ever been interested in them too much because of what they did to me and destroyed my home. But I think if I look past that, I think I would be interested to learn about them. I am working on some ideas, and I have noticed some small little details about Viking history that I might make a video on when I'm more confident with Viking history and knights. But for the meantime, I'm just focusing on what I'm somewhat good at.
I get that. No, that's definitely cool. I was very much the same way. When I first came into For Honor, I felt a draw to the samurai because my focus in school was Asian history and culture. That was my focus at the time. And so I started off very much a fan of the samurai, but my schooling eventually led me to learning more about the Crusades and about knight history, and soon I just grew an appreciation for all the factions. I started learning about more and more, and my passion for history as it grew and evolved, my love for honor grew until eventually I wanted to start making my own content. So it definitely you start at one point and then build from there. So I totally get that. Um, so my next question, I think there's no doubt that you and me and maybe one or two more creators talk about history and For Honor. My question is a two-parter. Why did you want to make a YouTube channel about history specifically? And you kind of already answered this, but I'll ask it again. Why do you think that the history aspect is so important to For Honor? Because some people have pointed out to me, no one cares about the history. It's just a fantasy medieval game. No one cares about history. Why talk about it? If someone asked you that, which I'm sure someone probably has or will, how do you feel about that? So those are two questions. Why build a history-based YouTube channel, and why do you think history is important to talk about?
Yeah. Well, with the YouTube part of it, I didn't. It wasn't originally a history channel at the start. It was more or less just a throw things at the wall and see what's stuck. And at the time, I mostly just made music videos. That, thank God, I don't do anymore. And I made that content. I wasn't really happy with it. It got me views now and then, like pretty good ones, and some subscribers now and then. But it wasn't really content I enjoyed making. It was soulless, and I just didn't feel any passion for it. So at the time, I just stopped doing it, and I wanted to do something more entertaining for me. And knowing my love of history, I kind of got the idea of like, well, how about I talk about my love of history and actually make it into a content that I enjoy, and then maybe people would enjoy. And yeah, it's been fun for that. Now, I'd like to say that my channel is a history channel so far.
Yeah, I would say that.
On the part about people should be caring about history, I think it depends on how you feel with For Honor and just other games. But I think playing For Honor, for me personally, the best way I can try and explain is that playing For Honor was a fun experience. It's a fun game, has its ups and downs, but also it can kind of somewhat teach you a little bit more about history and kind of get you into the field of like, oh, that's kind of cool. I like this Egyptian warrior. How about I learn a bit more about him? then oh wow, I actually really like Egyptian history. So I feel like that's really important with For Honor because it can get people to think about the characters or at least the setting and go like, huh, I actually kind of like this. Let me do some research or at least maybe look into it a bit more. And I think you get to learn a lot more from that experience and to either enjoy the game a lot more like I do, or at least just to understand some small little details that you might find interesting. Like I like to find like, oh, I see samurai clan symbols everywhere, and I go, oh, I know what that is, and I know what that is, and that's cool. And yeah, I think it's just a little fun little detail, or at least experience that can get you to more appreciate history and the game itself.
No, I get that totally. In fact, that it sounds what you're saying sounds a lot like what I did too. When I came into For Honor, and a lot of people know this, I'm not a great gamer, so I was never going to be great at the game. I was never going to be one of these people who could break down the mechanics of the game or the like strategies of the game. Like, oh, this character has X frame rates, this character has X undodgeables, all that. I'm never going to be able to understand that the way other people do. But if there's one thing I do know, and you know as well, is history. And being able to play this game and see the little nuggets of history that are dropped here and there is something that we can appreciate that a lot of other people can't. And I think that's one of the most fun things you can do as a history channel, to expose and show other people these things that we care so much about and enjoy, so that they can start to appreciate them too. So that let's move on to my next question. What would you like to see For Honor do in the future in terms of the addition of historical characters or historical tidbits? You mentioned that you'd like to see them do something, another cool Halloween event next year that did kind of what they did this year. But other than just that, what kind of stuff would you like to see them do?
I think I would like to see them use more historical events, especially with like samurai. I think maybe adding, I think a good idea would be them to either add a Mongolian warrior or maybe a Korean warrior, so they can maybe make the story of the invasion, of the Japanese invasion to Korea, and I think that would be a good idea. Or at least just maybe experiment with some certain historical events, maybe with the Vikings invading France and stuff like that. I think that could be an interesting thing. But for me personally, I think I would love to see maybe the Mongol invasion done in For Honor, because we've seen how Ghost of Tsushima did it, and that was a very wonderful experience to see and play. So I think For Honor doing that would be a really cool thing to see, or even maybe the invasion of Korea. I don't think I've seen any game or anything to really replicate that or really do it. So I think that would be a wonderful experience that Ubisoft can hit that on the mark and do it immediately before anyone else does it, like Ghost of Tsushima and Sucker Punch. So I think that'd be really cool to see.
I think that'd be a cool idea too. And I like what you're saying there, because a lot of people talk more about heroes they want to see. You're saying you want to see events replicated. And I think that's a cool idea. But I do see a problem, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. By replicating a historical event, we run the risk of excluding other factions. Like if we do the invasion of Korea, that would be very samurai focused. But what would the Knights, Vikings, Wulin, and the Outlanders have to do with that? In the case of the Jorogumo event, they teamed up with Maiko to destroy the Jorogumo. How do you think it would work out if they replicated the Korean invasion? How would we include the other factions?
Mm. I guess my only idea of that is to maybe just have the Holocaust and the Chimera, and the Koreans may have a secret weapon that they're planning to use to maybe completely wipe out. If more for maybe some reason, like they just want peace, so they want to wipe it out, or they want to wipe it out to take it over. And maybe they're trying to fight the Koreans to beat them, or at least maybe the Holocaust is trying to take over Korea for more land and more resources to continue their war in Heathmore. So it is an interesting idea to add all the factions in. I think they can do it. It'll be a bit weird, but I think the overall experience will still be enjoyable.
I think it'd be an interesting idea to, what if maybe Chimera reached out to the Korean warriors to try to form an alliance, but the Korean warriors, once they came over, started animosity with the samurai because maybe there's a historical feud there, and maybe peace talks broke down around the samurai, and that turned into a feud. And people started picking their side. There are lots of ways we could do that.
Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely.
Yeah, I think that's very, and it involves creativity, so I definitely enjoy it. That was one of the things that I didn't like about the newest season with Commander Ravier and Afira and all that, because it looked like they were trying to
Mm.
kind of replicate the Crusades, or at least a part of the Crusading era.
Yeah,
And
I
as you
felt that
know,
as well.
yeah, and as you know, I took issue because I'm like, that's not
Yeah.
how it worked at all. But not that I wouldn't like to see them approach the Crusades in an interesting way, but not that way. So you mentioned
I think
Ghost.
for me,
Oh,
oh,
go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
For me personally, I think the other issue for me when that happened was the Wooling kind of got pushed to the side. I kind of
Yeah,
felt really sad
yeah.
about that. They didn't just keep missing on content with the Wooling, and I'm just getting really sad of it. At
I think
this point, I don't know what they want to do with the Wooling, but I hope they do give them maybe a full season for themselves to maybe up the
yeah,
Wooling numbers and maps and things like that. It's just a bit sad to see that they were just forgotten about this season.
it is. I really hate what they did this year with the Wulin, just basically nothing. Um, I do feel like they've been kind of shat on, which I'm very disappointed about. I love the Wulin. I think a part of it is because when the Wulin were first released, the community was kind of hateful towards them and really not receptive. And so I feel like they just kind of said, okay, then we're not going to put a lot of stock in the Wulin anymore, which makes me very sad to hear that. That's very unfortunate because I like the Wulin a lot. And I feel like they need
Same here.
more, like maps, heroes, cosmetics, stuff like that. But okay, so while we're on the subject of other stuff, you mentioned Ghost of Tsushima, which comes to my next question. What other games and media appeals to your interest? And you said that you had a fascination for samurai. I imagine you had that before you started playing For Honor. What other stuff out there piques your interest in terms of that?
For me, it would definitely be like movies. Like Kurosawa films really piqued my interest,
Yeah.
and especially Ghost of Tsushima. That was a wonderful experience to say the least. It really made me love samurai even more, and at least more understand more of that time period. And I do somewhat knew of it, but it made me appreciate it a lot more. And the only other samurai game I've played that I've enjoyed that I wouldn't say is fully samurai is Sekiro. Sadly, that made me cry more than be happy, but got to take a win somewhere.
Well, I didn't enjoy Sekiro that much because I'm not that good at Dark Souls style games or that kind of stuff. So I didn't enjoy it that much. But I loved Ghost of Tsushima. It's a fantastic game. I love it to death. I also loved stuff like Neo and Neo 2. I don't know if you've played those. Lots of Japanese folklore in that.
Yeah, sadly, I haven't played those ones yet.
I would recommend that those are pretty good from my experience. But regardless of that, that actually brings me to something else, and this is kind of a funny question. But what, what you said that you got interested in samurai history and stuff like that from school. Now you're from Australia, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm from America, the southeastern part of America. Here in America, we hardly even touch Asian history until high school. And when we do touch Asian history, it's usually to talk about World War II. So
Mm.
when you were in school, thinking about the samurai, like, do you remember like what they focused on? Was it just a generalized history, or did they mention any specific names? Like, what do you remember about the lessons you took in school that really opened your eyes to, wow, the samurai are far more interesting than I thought?
Well, the funny thing was, we didn't really learn too much about samurai history. There were other history we were learning about, and then after when that ended, we would have to learn about the Western Front, World War Two,
Right.
topics I was never really interested in. But what we learned about was more or less the samurai's armor and their ability to fight. And our goal in that lesson was to figure out of these three warriors of the European knight, samurai, and the Mongolian warrior who would be the best fighter.
Mm.
Sadly, I didn't get to choose the samurai because my friend chose it, and
Mm-hmm.
he didn't do a good job on it. I wish I got it, but I got the Mongolian warrior, and I did really good on that. So I got an A or a B, so thank God. But I also really liked Mongolian history at the time, and obviously knowing a bit about them invading Japan, that also helped out my little project. But we didn't learn too much about them, and then we kind of stopped learning about the samurai and Mongolian warriors, and we didn't really learn anything about European knights. So it was a bit no one really chose them because we didn't learn anything about them. So then we stopped, and then we learned about the Great Wall of China and more about emperors. I don't know the exact, but I remember the emperor drinking mercury. We learnt stuff about that and the clay
Mm.
soldiers, and then other than that, we just stopped and went on to modern history.
And that is a shame that y'all didn't go further into that kind of stuff because that's the stuff that I really enjoy. It's kind of funny. My brother Lark, he has a really good knowledge of general history. Me, I focused heavily on medieval and stuff like that. So that's the kind of stuff that I loved growing up. And that project you were talking about, where you were talking about who would win, a Mongolian or a samurai, that's fascinating. So I guess that leads into my next question. What about the samurai specifically do you love the most? Is it just their warrior spirit? Is it their history? Is it their aesthetic? Like, what would you say is it about the samurai that really piques your interest the most?
I think it's definitely the how long they've been fighting each other and all the clans that appear in history and either disappear or to get like to become famous, like Oda Nobunaga, Takagawa Ieyasu,
Mm-hmm.
Hideyoshi, and like their stories of unifying Japan, and also like lesser clans like the Fujiwara, Takeda, Minamoto, the Taira. It's all interesting to find out this small little history about these clans rising up to gain power to try and become the shogun or to overthrow the emperor, and then for it to continue so long for them to get guns and then to continue the war, and then all of a sudden just be fighting each other at the last stand, samurai, and the more westernized Japan. I find that more interesting than ever that they've been fighting for so long, even their other people and themselves, and it just never gave up.
That's impressive. I'm actually glad to hear you say that because, believe it or not, when I was in high school, I liked the samurai in high school. Don't get me wrong, but it was weird because there was a huge when I was in high school. There was a that was when the anime craze was going nuts, and
Oh
so
yeah,
anyone who had an interest in samurai or Japan or anything like that was immediately associated with like the weeaboo culture, like the otaku culture. And so they were often made fun of for it because this was before anime was cool and mainstream. Now it's cool, but back then it was not. So it was very strange. I didn't go around talking to people about my love for samurai or Japanese stuff because I didn't want to be associated with the people who, like were very much over the top with their weeaboo nature. These were the people who
yeah.
believed that the katana could cut steel and that, the
Oh,
samurai were nigh invincible, these kind of people. And so,
yeah. Those
yeah,
people, man, like
yeah,
they
they
give me a
got it.
headache.
Like I like anime, I do, but even I'm not that crazy. But
Let's hope not.
yeah, it's one of those things. But I'm glad to hear you say that your interest would never stemmed from a like for anime because that's the way a lot of people start. They start by liking anime and buying into the anime version of samurai, then grow from there to appreciate the real samurai. And you're very different. You said no, I like them for their history. Like that was what got you interested, and that's actually really good to hear because I feel like if you start with a love for the history, you'll have a more in-depth love for what you learn as you grow. Whereas with a person who starts as a weeb, they're starting with a myth and having to debunk the myth as they're climbing through the knowledge. So you started
Yeah,
out way
that's
better than some.
yeah, for
So
those people, it's quite hard because I've experienced that. For me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of anime because I find it a bit weird for myself. And also, I find that if they try and do something history related, like I remember a couple of years ago, they tried to recreate the story of Yasuke,
uh
the
huh,
Black Samurai.
yeah.
I hated that, not because it's anime, because there's mechas in it and voodoo, witchcraft, a story about a historical, maybe well, figure,
Oh,
and they just did that. And I think that's where my more hatred for anime comes from because they just muddy the water for history, and it's just kind of hard to say, yeah, I love samurai history, but no, I'm not. I don't want to be part of them.
oh, dude, like,
And the other thing as
dude.
well is if you try and search up a historical name, clan, and that sometimes anime kind of just fills in the search bars. Because I know for me, I'm trying to do research for the Fujiwara clan. It's very hard because I just find anime and I'm not trying to look for anime. I'm trying to look for the actual historical clan, and sometimes it gets muddied and it's hard to find that history.
Yeah, and part of that is because a lot of anime characters use historical based names like Fujiwara, for example, is the name of this girl from an anime that Lark introduced me to, and so I know the Fujiwara clan, and I laugh every time I hear her name because I'm like, it's ridiculous. Actually, funny thing is, the first historical anime I saw that really pissed me off was the I think it's called The Misadventures of Oda Nobunaga, which is basically a retelling of Oda Nobunaga, only all the genders are reversed. And so,
What?
yeah, basically it's an isekai. You know isekai, like guy gets teleported into a game or fantasy world. This guy apparently
Oh,
gets teleported into feudal Japan, but all the genders are reversed. Oda's a girl, and all the
uh-huh.
genders are girls, and none of them are the appropriate age too. They're all at the age where they could be have the hots for him. So it turns into one of these harem anime situations, and I hated it. I was so mad. I was going,
I
this
hope
is
I never see that in my
yeah.
lifetime. I really
Never
hope I
watch
never
it.
see it.
Avoid it if you can. It is so bad.
I
Though. It is
I
so
think if I
bad.
looked at that, I would feel really bad about the Oda clan and especially Oda Nobunaga. But I hope I never see Takeda Shingen like that. I hope they don't do my man bad.
Oh, I
I
won't
really hate
go
to
into
see that.
Shingen. I won't go into Shingen. I won't.
Oh
Don't bring that up for
no!
your own sanity. I won't bring that up for your own sanity. Especially what they did to Hanzo, Hattori Hanzo. Again, don't like it. No. Yeah. But anyway, so I'm very glad that I got to ask you some of these questions. My last question that I'll ask is of all the videos that you've been able to make, I'm not going to ask which one is your favorite, but which one, because it's hard to pick, but which one
Yeah.
would you have done better? And what kind of video do you dream of making if you had the time, resources, and ability?
All right, that's a really good thing. For me, the video I wish I could do better was the. It's not a history video, surprisingly. It's a cinematic video I did a long time ago. It's called The Story of the Dawn Empire. I wanted, originally, before I did history and stopped making music videos, I wanted to do more cinematic content. And I tried my hardest to make a story about the Dawn Empire, and it was very hard because I don't have the necessary means to get cinematic clips from For Honor itself, so I had to use clips from other games and actual movies as well to try and tell my story that I wanted to tell. If I definitely had more better equipment, I would love to do that again sometime in the future, but I don't think I can because it's so hard to get people to help out with getting cinematic content because I usually play on Xbox and it's hard to get people to want to help with spectator mode. So
Yeah.
that's obviously hard and hardest thing ever. And I don't have the necessary means for a PC to do more better like other people do. So it's just I'm kind of stuck until Ubisoft adds maybe a photo mode, and then I can zoom in. But other than that,
Yeah.
waiting on Ubisoft to add that.
The pains of console limitations. I get it. Yeah.
Saddening,
It is.
very saddening.
Well, those were all my questions. Do you have any you want to ask me?
Of course, my friend.
Of course.
I, I guess the funny thing is that I'm going to start off with the thing that you didn't want to start off with. What's your favorite video on your channel? I know it's hard, but I think you
That
can
is a
do it.
hard. It is so hard because I've made so many. Um, I'm going to answer with two. One of them has to
Of
be the
course, you can answer
Apollyon.
as many as you want.
Well, the reason I say these two is because one is Apollyon versus Astria, and the reason that one of my favorites is because it was the video that got me noticed. Before that, I had maybe 1,000 to 1,500 subs, I think. But then after I released that, I have exploded essentially. I that was the video that really got me on the map, and so I owe it the success of my channel. So that's one of the reasons it's my favorite. But I don't want to say that one's my favorite because honestly, I feel like I've made better videos. I really do, and I think that if I had to pick another one, um, shoot, it is such a hard, it is such a hard choice. I guess it would be my response video to extra credits orc video. Not because it was the
Oh,
best one I put together, but because it opened my eyes to the reality that I can make response videos that
yeah,
challenge the status quo, that's challenge like what a large group of people think, because I think extra credits was the largest channel I'd ever responded to at the time,
mm,
and I was scared to respond to them. I genuinely was. I was talking to Lark for a while. Should I do this? Is this something I want to do? But I did it because Lark pointed out sometimes, whether it's even when it's hard, you need to call out wrong for what it is. And I said, you're right. You're exactly right. So that video made me realize I shouldn't be afraid just because the channel's bigger. I should point out wrong because it's wrong. And so that gave me the nerve to keep growing in that regard. So those would be the two I'd pick.
I think they're pretty good choices, and especially that orc video. I know of that one, sadly.
Mm.
Uh, that one, mm,
I've
not the
I've
best
made
I've ever seen.
I've made
That
better
video.
response videos since then, like my response video to the Warhammer stuff and all that. I feel like those were better, but it was the orc video response that gave me the nerve to do bigger response videos. So those
Yeah.
that would be.
For yeah, for me, I think my favorite response video of yours was the Lord of the Rings, and I think it was uh, it was Lord of the Rings and the other movie that Christians were saying that there
Oh, the
wasn't
C.S.
Christian
Lewis
content.
and the LED thing. Yeah.
I actually really liked that video. That was one of my favorites. I'm not Christian myself, but I really enjoyed it, and it kind of got me to see a bit more of that side, and I actually quite enjoyed that one.
Oh yeah, and I've said it before. I don't demand other people practice my faith, but it upsets me when I hear people who claim to be Christian say stuff like that. Because as a Christian, I firmly believe that we all have the opportunity to be saved through Christ, and to dismiss other people, just say I don't want anything to do with you because you're a sinner. I always say you are aware we're sinners too. Like, we're not any better than them. Our goal is to reach them, to help them, to show them a better way, and we can't do that if we treat them as filthy and unclean and dirty. Don't partake in the sin, but go to them because they need the salvation. Their whole argument was a dangerous one, as from a Christian perspective. And I'm glad that you like that, even though you weren't a Christian. That means a lot, because it means that my message still reached people regardless of faith. So that makes me very happy.
Of course, no problem. It's just I enjoyed it for what it was, and it kind of got me to see a bit more of the side of like a bit side of sorry, a bit more of your Christian faith in a better light than other ways that I've seen it. So I quite enjoyed that for it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem. Now, my next question is, where did your love of history come from?
Okay, great question. Long story short, because it is a long story, I'll try to shorten it as best I can. I was a literature person. I grew up loving books and reading novels and stuff like that. I was trying to write my own books. Lark was the history major. He was the one who pursued everything history, and he used to irritate the fire out of us at dinner as a family, because he would just give us some historical fact that nobody knew and said, "Did you know that at this time this and this has happened?" It used to drive me crazy, not because I didn't like it, but because I wish I knew that kind of stuff. I was like, I wish I
Hmm.
was that smart. I wish that I could talk about that kind of stuff. Because no one at the dinner table wants to hear you say, "Hey, do you guys want to know about this new poem I wrote, or about this new story I'm reading?" No one cares. But you want to talk about this really cool hero that fought in such and such battle? Oh, shoot, I want to hear all about it. So when I got to college, I ended up taking a course on the history of Japan, and I found it unbelievably fascinating. It also helped that I had a friend from Japan who I ended up dating, which was awesome. Um, and that grew my interest there. But when I realized that there's so much more than just Japanese history, I started studying European history, particularly the Knights, after my father told us about how we were related to Knights. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I started studying, and I found it so much fun. I was learning to have fun. Whenever me and my brother were eating together, I could actually bring up historical knowledge that he didn't know. It turned into us growing each other. Soon I just fell in love with history, because a lot like what Sabaton, the famous Swedish rock band, said, history is unique because it's not made up stories. These are things that actually happened, that real people partook in. And by learning about that, I understand more about how we got from there to here. And it's opened my eyes and genuinely my heart to new understandings and new things. And so I now feel bad that I didn't start it earlier, genuinely. But that's what got me interested in history. I wanted to open my eyes to the way our world works, and because Lark genuinely gave me an interest. He was always interested. I learned from him, and we both grew together. That's how that started.
I think that's a lovely story. And speaking of books, do you plan to make any more books in the future?
Yes, I do. Currently, I have two books published: Death Diary, the original volume, and Written Stone. One is a short story because they're published via like ebooks, like what is it, Kindle version. And I
Mm.
was testing how Kindle worked, so I published my Written Stone story just to test how that worked, and then I published Death Diary after that. I am rewriting Death Diary because I want to do it better than I did before, and I'm actually sharing those entries on YouTube. And once I finish with all the entries, I have 50 planned. After I finish all the entries, I'll re release that and publish it. I also plan to publish Shogun of Crime, which is a story I need to really finish. I really just need to sit down and.
Well, it sounds interesting to me for sure. Shogun of Crime.
Oh
Can't
well,
wait to read that.
I think you like it. The story is it's basically a crime drama, basically modern crime. You know, a yakuza and mafia
Mm.
kind of thing. But it's retelling the campaign of Oda Nobunaga, but in a modern setting. Basically,
Oh yeah.
you have this yakuza daughter who's supposed to represent Oda. She's coming into this new land on a forced marriage kind of thing to unify a yakuza family and a mafia family. She takes over the family by killing the husband, and then uses her family, this her newfound clan, to wage war on the criminal underworld of this city, and creates her empire. And each event, each battle, each interaction reflects something Oda had to go through. I didn't want to make it exactly like what Oda did, so I changed a few things, like making Oda a
Mm.
girl, making Tokugawa a police officer. That Oda's character, who I named Oichi after Oda's sister,
Yeah.
has a relationship with, which is how I replicated Oda and Tokugawa's alliance. Like, I had a lot of fun trying to recreate history through this crime drama. And so I've grown it. I think I'm on chapter 20 now, or maybe a little further. I need to double check. But yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with that. I want to publish that for sure.
It definitely does sound like a very lovely book. And do you plan to make any more historical events in modern time? Because I do think that is a very niche type of topic that I don't know if I know. Oh, Jesus. I don't know if anyone else has done that type of topic. So do you plan to make more about in the future, or would
I'd
this
love
be
to.
the first one?
This is my first, and if this goes well, I would love to do more. Like, I'd love to do a story about the First Crusade in a more modern setting, like retelling that. I think that'd be a ton of fun. Because I feel like the Crusades is a time era that many people don't understand, and I'd love to retell that from a perspective, from a new perspective in a modern setting, to give people a better understanding of what the emotions were, what the motivations were in the Crusades. Like I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. In Shogun of Crime,
Yeah.
you know that Oda Nobunaga at one point, one of his biggest problems that he faced was dealing with the Iko-Iki, the monks of Mount Ichiyama Honganji, who gave him
Yeah.
so much trouble. I replicated that in Shogun of Crime by having her deal with a group of zealous religious extremists that were based in a in like a youth program, a Muslim youth program, that were terrorizing their community for helping uh, Oichi's criminal syndicate. And so she wages war on them, not because she doesn't like them or because she's like hateful towards their religion, but because they keep giving her trouble, hurting the people who are supporting her, attacking her, and harassing her just enough to annoy her. So she, well, shock and awe, basically
Yeah.
destroys their whole youth center. Not out of I just hate who you are, but I hate what you've been doing. Like, I want to replicate not just the event, but the motivations behind it, which makes it tricky, but a lot of fun when I get it right. So I want to do the same thing with the Crusades if I could.
That sounds good. My next question is, what's the okay? Before I say this one, I'm not the biggest fan of you. I mean, okay, that sounds wrong, but I
Wow.
don't watch all your
Okay.
videos because I'm very busy.
That's
But
fine.
I wish I could be the number one fan of you. I'll take number two. I'll take number two spot.
All right.
So, what is the story behind your character, Raven Knight?
Oh, okay. Well, True story. Well, the logo that I use was designed by my friend Jay because I love the knights and I love the samurai. And I said, let's make a logo that combines a knight helmet and a samurai kabuto together. And he made that, and I really liked it. I thought it was cool. But as we
Mm.
grew further and further as a channel, I asked if we could expand it, and he said, "Okay, how do you want me to base the armor set?" And I showed him a Lawbringer from the game, and I said, "Let's use that as a base." And he built the character. And knowing me as a writer, I wanted to make a story around him. So I made a fantasy story about a warrior, a Raven Knight or Raven Lord character, seeking to reclaim his kingdom from a evil warlock or wizard, what have you, who's supposed to represent essential ignorance or an unwillingness to understand the wider world. That was what he was supposed to represent, and it's just a war story. I've written it kind of as a fun thing. I don't have any intention of publishing any of it, but I had a lot of fun designing the idea, and so that's where the Raven Lord basically came from. I use him as an avatar for a lot of my videos and for my thumbnails because he represents a lot of what I stand for. The Raven is a large part of what represents me, and so
Mm.
that's where that came from.
I think that's a very nice story. I must say, you've done it pretty well. Well, your friend did it really well, combining the knight and the samurai together. I
I'll
think it
pass that
looks
along to him. Yeah, Jay will be happy to hear that.
looks great. Now my next question is, I think we've already kind of know, but I'll still ask it. Do you have any big projects that you're working on?
Yes, I have a couple. I won't spoil too much here, but um, I am still working on For Honor and Glory. But the big project that I want to do is I'm planning on doing a versus series. Me and Slanderous, another For Honor content creator, used to do group like we used to do crossover projects where he would invite me on and we discuss a specific For Honor character and another specific For Honor character and discuss who would win if they were to fight in real life because he wanted a historian and battle expert's opinion. We stopped doing those for some reason, and we haven't tried again. But I want to bring that back. So what I'm working on right now is planning on doing a versus series where I talk about specific For Honor characters, like take maybe Lawbringer, and then take Shugoki, and say if these two were to fight in real life, who would win? And I would base it based on their armor, their default armor, their weapon, their training,
Mm.
like stuff like that. Like who is more likely to come out on top? Kind of a deadliest warrior thing, only For Honor related. That
Oh
is something
yes,
that
I know that.
that's what I'm. That's the biggest thing I'm planning right now because my most popular videos are videos like my Heroes in History series, but I can't do those until a new hero comes out. So I
Of
have to wait
course.
a little while before the next hero. So that's on hiatus. So those are that's what I'm planning right now.
On the Heroes of History aspect, do you have a plan to go back to those videos and maybe add more content towards them? Have you ever thought about that?
I have. I have thought about many times going back and redoing some of my old videos. Like particular, I think there were three Heroes in History videos that I don't like that I would love to redo. The Kyoshin one, the Warden one, and what was the other one that kind of annoyed me? Um, I think it was the Conqueror, but I don't remember exactly. I'll need to go back and look. But there were three specific Heroes in History's videos that I wasn't happy with, either because I
Hmm.
rushed them, or because I learned new information that I want to bring to light, or because I feel like I could have edited them better. Like, there's a lot that I'd like to
Yeah.
redo. Um, so
I
yeah,
feel the
there's
same with my videos as well, so don't worry.
Oh, I doubt we're alone. I'm sure there are plenty of people who would love to redo some old content. I've also thought about going back and fixing some of my old hero analysis videos, which is what started my channel. Because I said some things that I regret now. Like, for example, I shat on Warlord, and now I've learned more about him. And like, oh man, okay, I was wrong. He's not as bad as I thought he was. Um, so
Yeah.
I'd love to go back and fix some of my old mistakes because I made plenty. Like, you can't trust me when
We
talking
all
about
do.
character balance. Yeah, yeah. But those are basically the ones I would change.
Yep. What's your plans with your channel in the future?
Now that's the question of the century. Um, it's hard to say. I started this channel as a For Honor channel to talk about For Honor, obviously. But I've grown it into something much bigger. I talk about so much more on here. I do response videos, I do writing videos, I do Dead by Daylight, I do Rainbow Six Siege, I do a lot of other videos. And people have said maybe I should start a second channel where I can do all my writing stuff. The problem is I don't think my writing stuff is nearly popular enough to warrant a second channel. Otherwise, I would do that. Um, but I also have to accept that there's going to come a day, maybe not this year, maybe not in 2 years, maybe not in 3 years, but there's going to come a day where For Honor is no longer producing new content. It just kind of goes dead, as all games eventually do. When that day
Yeah.
comes, I need to make sure that my channel can sustain itself. Because if my channel is only a For Honor channel, then that's not good news when For Honor finally does inevitably stop producing. And so for the future, I want to expand my channel into more of an educational channel. I mean, obviously with gaming, but I want to teach through this. Like if I could take maybe Ghost of Tsushima and use that to teach more about samurai history. If I could take Rainbow Six Siege and use that to teach more about military tactics. If I could take, I'd love to read audiobooks. I'd love to, there's a lot of things I'd love to do. The trick is finding
Yeah.
out what will be more expedient. We'll get views, we'll get people interested. Because, like, I've done series where no one gave a crap. No one cared, so I
Yeah.
dropped the series. And then I've done other series that I just tried out for fun, like the For Honor Couples video, and they blew up, you know?
I heard about that. I
Yeah,
heard about
yeah.
that. Sadly, it
Eventually,
got copyrighted. I'm
ah,
sorry to hear that.
very sad, big sads. But hey,
Copyright
listen,
is one hell of a thing to deal with, trust me.
no kidding, especially with music. Gah.
Oh,
It's so irritating. People who don't make content, you don't even know what we have. We content creators constantly when we're uploading, we have to watch that checking thing. Like, come on, don't like.
it becomes
But
an X. We just cry and find out what we have to do to fix it.
yeah, and the biggest problem is like you might think, oh well, why don't you just take down the video, fix the music, and re-upload it? The problem is if I do that, it won't get the same amount of views because people have already seen it. So
Yeah.
whatever. But that's not the point. If I were looking into the future, I want my channel to continue to produce For Honor content. But when the day comes where For Honor is no longer what I'm producing for, I want to make sure that my channel remains educational, enlightening. I want it to be a place where people can come and know that they can learn something new in a safe environment where they don't feel like I'm being preachy or talking down to anyone. I want to be a very wholesome teacher online.
Yeah. I think that's a good thing to work towards. And I don't think your channel will disappear anytime soon, thank God.
I would
So
hope
what type of yeah, I think we all hope not. What type of literature inspired you to get into writing?
Oh, that's a great question. Actually, I think the first time I tried writing something, I was in middle school. I had seen Top Gun for the first time. I loved this.
Ooh.
I loved the movie. I thought it was super cool. I wanted to tell this. I was that kid. Okay, I was that little kid who, when I was a child, I would pick up a stick and run around the backyard swinging at trees, pretending I was a knight fighting enemies. I had a
What?
very active imagination, and I wanted
I
to
did
do
that
it.
too. So,
But once you hit middle school, you don't have recess.
mm.
You can't do that anymore. So
Oh
how
yeah, you
else am I
can't.
supposed to express my imagination? So I write. And so I started writing a story about a fighter pilot. I only got about maybe 3 chapters in because, well, I didn't know anything about fighter pilots and I didn't have time to research. But I loved the experience of writing down my ideas. And so I wanted to tell superhero stories specifically. I read Batman comics, Superman comics, Wonder Woman comics. I was a big DC kid. And so I wanted to tell my own
Yeah.
superhero stories. And so what I started doing at first was I started drawing comics because I wanted to draw those images, but I was never a good artist. Like if anyone's ever seen my art, Hannah knows,
Mm.
Jay knows. But when my friend said your art isn't that good, I said fine, I'll write, and that actually helped me out because in school, no one gets teachers will catch you. Hey, why are you doodling in class? Stop doodling. But if they see you writing,
Yeah.
he's clearly taking notes. When in reality, I'm writing my next, novella. So I started writing to express my imagination. But what got me into, like, if there's a book that I could name that really inspired me, it would probably be The Book Thief by Marcus Zizak. That book, I read it ninth grade year in high school, I believe. it was a book that challenged me because it was very
Mm.
mature, but also very relatable. And for those who know, I wrote the Death Diary series. A lot of that came from Marcus Zizak's The Book Thief because Death has like he's the narrator of the story. And so that really made me go, wow, this could be fun. And so from there, it just kind of grew.
Well, that's good. On to my final question for you, my good friend.
Okay.
Out of all the projects that you, well, all out of all your projects, which one is your favorite one to write about?
Like my favorite one to work on?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good question. That is a very good question. Each kind of project I do comes with its own difficulties. Like
Mm.
I love Heroes in History because I get to do historical research, which I love, and then share it in a very creative way. That's fun. But at the same time, I also love my Executions Graded series. But the problem with Executions Graded is it requires a lot of time, a lot of sitting down watching the same animation over and over again, and then grading it, knowing that there's going to be 100 people who don't like what I have to say. On the other end of that, I love recording my own voice to do audio readings. But the problem there is not a lot of people want to hear me do my audiobook readings. So there's things I love about each thing I do, but then there are also consequences. If I had to pick
Yeah.
one thing that I love doing, the thing that I love doing the most, because I never regret it, is it would honestly it would probably be my Heroes in History series, just because I get such thrill out of researching, learning new things, drafting out what I've learned in a easy way, just
Mm.
having so much fun sharing what I love. That to me is peak. And the problem is, I mean, I can't do those videos until new heroes come out. So until they do, I do other
Yeah.
stuff, which I still love doing it. But when a new hero comes out, I just get pumped. I'm like, yes! Like when Magi and
Mm.
Nefira came out, yes! I can't wait to do their heroes in history. I was so excited. So yeah, that if I, it would probably be heroes in history for sure.
Well, that's good. I think if I were to suggest anything, have you ever thought about what I do? Because I do my hero history series on the characters in the campaign. Do you ever think about doing that?
I did. I did do like videos on like the history of like Hervis Daubeny and Holden Cross and stuff like that, but more from a lore perspective. Um, because I mean, one of the problems that I see is I don't like, for example, take Holden Cross. I can't think of many people historically that he connects to. Um, I can think of how his lore works, but
Yeah.
like I would need to really look into the references and stuff to find. Like I think it's awesome that you found historical references to characters like Fujikiyo and others. Or
Mm.
like that. That's impressive because I might have had to do a lot more research and just
It
learn how
took
to
me
do
a
it.
long time. Let's say that it took me a long time,
And that's
and
very impressive. But I
there's
mean,
still
and that's
points that I
definitely
could bring up with him.
yeah, that's definitely something I could try looking into. Um, so yeah, I'll keep that in mind. I'll keep that in mind. Um, at the same time, I don't want to steal your thunder either, because I know.
No, no, it's okay. I think my audience would much more appreciate you doing it than me. Let's be honest.
Nah,
I've been roasted for how I pronounce things already, so I think having the expert doing it would be a lot better.
that comes from dating a girl from Japan who schooled me on it like constantly. She made sure I could pronounce Japanese, even though I'm
Mm.
not fluent. She made sure I knew the basics. So, um, yeah,
I
in all
think
these
that's a good
days,
lesson to learn for sure.
well, she was strict. Weird how she was. She was shy as all get out when we were out in public or when we were eating out. But then when we were alone, just like practicing like language and stuff, oh, she'd get me. She'd get me every time. Um, very strict, but I enjoyed it all the same.
Yeah.
Regardless, but that I think that's both of our questions out of the way. I want to thank you, General Fujikiyo, for joining me on this interview. This was a lot of fun. For those of you who are watching this, who are not subscribed to General Fujikiyo, I will leave a link to his YouTube channel in the description so that you can go find him and give him a subscribe. He definitely deserves it. Go watch his
Thank you.
videos, especially the stuff that he did during the Jorogumo Halloween event. I loved seeing those, and I was actually happy to be involved with one of them, the video about Jorogumo, which was Very, very fun. Well, it wasn't
Yep.
about Jewel. Which one was that? You asked me
It
about.
was it was the second one. I asked you about the statue that had the kanji on it. I
Yes,
couldn't
that's
read
right.
kanji. I could barely read English, but I needed your help on that one.
No, that's right. That's right. Yeah, you did, and I remember that. But so definitely go check out his videos. I mean, those were the ones that I enjoyed the most. But he's got a lot of other great content. So go check him out. Give him a sub. Give him some support. I would definitely appreciate that. If you're visiting from General Fujikiyo's channel, welcome to my channel. Glad that you're here. And don't forget, you guys, to like and subscribe and comment on this video. I always read the comments. And if you have any further questions for me or General Fujikiyo, leave them in the comment section down below. And if I see any for the General, I'll send them to him via Discord so that he can answer them in the comment section as well. And who knows, if we get enough new questions, maybe we'll do another video where we answer them for you guys. With all that in mind, anything else you want to add, General?
The only thing I would obviously have to add is switch the faction war, everyone. Please join the samurai. Leave the Vikings and knights. We're better. Please. I don't want to keep losing.
I think it for me. Be a knight, be a Viking, be a knight, be a samurai. Just don't be a Viking. That's big. I'm sick of Vikings.
That's the takeaway from this video. Don't be
Yeah,
a Viking.
don't be a
Join the knights
Viking.
or the samurai.
Be a knight or a samurai. Either have the power of God or anime on your side.
Oh, no.
And I think
Oh,
on that
that's
silly
great.
note, we'll go ahead and end there. Thank you guys so much, and we
Yep.
will see you in our next videos. Take care.